Hello and welcome to If Guitars Could Speak, the YouTube documentary series where we examine interesting musicians, awesome pieces of gear, or noteworthy moments from rock history. For today's episode, we will look at a good old-fashioned rock and roll feud. I'm talking about the beef between David Bowie and Stevie Ray Vaughan. This is a feud that you may not have heard about as it flew under the radar for many years. It left SRV feeling a little bit like Bowie was treating him with kid gloves. But before we dig into it, as always, please remember to subscribe to the Guitar Historian channel and hit the like button right below if you want to let YouTube know that more guitar fans would like to see videos just like this one. Now, without further ado, on to the Bowie SRV feud of 1983. David Bowie entered the early 80s as a fading glam rock icon. After a string of critically acclaimed yet low-selling albums in the late 70s during his so-called Berlin era, including Low, Heroes, and Lodger, Bowie was looking to restart his commercial success. In 1981, he teamed up with Queen to produce the hit single Under Pressure, but he was still searching for the right formula to get himself back on the charts as a solo artist. In 1983, Bowie started to collaborate with Nile Rodgers of the band Chic, who brought a more funk sensibility, as well as introduced Bowie to more modern recording procedures and techniques. They began work on an album that Bowie hoped would rekindle his pop star status and return him to the charts. The album that would become Let's Dance started as what Bowie called a rediscovery of white English ex-art school student meets black American funk, a refocusing of young Americans. When Bowie initially played what would become the title track to Rodgers, Nile remembered it being a plodding, dull, and earnest folk song with deep Bowie vocals. Rodgers asked Bowie if he could rearrange the music while retaining the vocal line and spirit of the writer's intentions. He ended up reworking the song extensively, adding a distinctive upstroke rhythm guitar line awash with delay that drove the song's sound and covered the lack of chord changes. But there was still one element that Bowie felt was missing from the song: a solo for the last quarter of it. Enter a young Stevie Ray Vaughan. Bowie caught Vaughan and Double Trouble's show at the Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland in 1982. Bowie was so impressed with Stevie's playing he talked backstage with him for hours after the show. Vaughan was struck by how much Bowie seemed interested in the Texas blues style that SRV and his band were basically inventing. Vaughan would say of Bowie, "To tell you the truth, I was not very familiar with David's music when he asked me to play on the sessions. David and I talked for hours and hours about our music, about funky Texas blues and its roots. I was amazed at how interested he was. At Montreux, he said something about being in touch, and then he tracked me down in California, months and months later." Vaughan would famously play the lead guitar solo at the end of the title track of Let's Dance, as well as lend his licks to other tracks peppered throughout the album, including the second hit, China Girl. The sessions mostly went smoothly, with Stevie even having his favorite wings shipped from his Austin, Texas barbecue joint to the New York City studio. But once talks began about Stevie joining Bowie's tour to support the hit album, the future virtuoso had trouble, some might say double trouble, and cracks started to form in the relationship between the legendary rocker and the burgeoning superstar upstart. At first, Bowie didn't want Vaughan doing press for his album Texas Flood, as he felt it could interfere with Bowie's release. Then the thought was that Vaughan and his band could open for Bowie on tour, after which SRV would then play Bowie's set as well. When this was deemed to be too much, the talks fell through. Stevie approached Bowie's musical director, Carlos Alomar, to try to hash something out. Alomar would tell Stevie that Bowie was the star and he would never forgive himself by not touring on his own to support Texas Flood. Alomar would help convince Stevie by saying, "Dude, what are you doing? Nobody has founded their career from this. You gotta remember that somebody's first record, man, that's their heart. They've been living with those songs for years, which made Texas Flood so special. It was kismet. He had to deny David. He wasn't supposed to be there, man. He was supposed to be promoting his debut, going out there and killing it, playing all night long, and then getting in the car and driving to the next gig. Not jet planes and sushi chefs. I think that would have jaded his bluesness. Stevie was the real deal, and he wasn't going to let anyone take that away from him." Stevie would say in 1986, "It stopped because Double Trouble was never really included on the shows. It was just a lot of He just wanted me to play with him." This became the last straw, and Stevie would quit Bowie's band on the eve of the Let's Dance tour to be replaced by Earl Slick. As Let's Dance became a massive worldwide hit, SRV and Double Trouble also began to make waves among the rock and blues genre, playing to awestruck crowds and enjoying major airplay and awards recognition, especially for the two singles Pride and Joy and Love Struck Baby. The latter single and video would receive regular video play on MTV, but it was another video that would send Stevie Ray Vaughan over the edge and cement his feud with Bowie to make it irreconcilable. Later in 1983, Vaughan would see Bowie's video for Let's Dance. It was a video that Stevie himself wasn't asked to play on, and at the end, sure enough, there was David Bowie playing a Stratocaster while wearing white gloves and miming to the licks that he hadn't played himself. Vaughan's response was immediate, vociferous, and colorful. He spit out, "That motherfucker shouldn't be pretending to play he wasn't even playing." With that, SRV and Bowie never spoke or collaborated ever again. Vaughan would go on to become a bona fide legend in his own right, going on to release 5 albums with Double Trouble and cement himself as one of the greatest guitar players who has ever lived. Tragically, Vaughan was killed in a helicopter crash on August 27, 1990, after playing an all-star jam with Eric Clapton in Wisconsin. He was only 35 years old. Bowie would scarcely make mention of Vaughan in his later years, but most chalk the feud up to the way Bowie's team treated Vaughan in Double Trouble, as they themselves were on the cusp of stardom. In the world of music, stars are stars and aren't always willing to allow other people to outshine them. Bowie's team seemed to be protecting his legendary status from the young upstart who would upstage him if they had allowed Double Trouble to open for him. Whatever the reasoning, both men left this world with unfinished business regarding each other, and that's eternally sad. Had they been able to work out something in 1983, we may have bore witness to one of the most legendary tours in rock and roll history. But that's another episode of If Guitars Could Speak. Remember, if you like this video, please hammer that thumbs up button down below, and remember to subscribe to the channel to get more guitar historian content like this. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.